Hello, my name is Peter Coy. I'm a member of the New York Financial Writers Association, and I'm pleased today to be interviewing Danielle DiMartino Booth, who is the CEO and Chief Strategist for QI Research, a research and analytics firm. Danielle started the firm in 2015, providing commentary and data through two things, the Daily Feather and the Weekly Quill. So we have a daily product and a weekly product. And her interviews with her have appeared in many of the publications that probably some of the people on this call belong to. You may have interviewed her yourself: Bloomberg, CNBC, Fox Business, Institutional Investor, Yahoo Finance, Wall Street Journal, Market Watch, Seeking Alpha, TD Ameritrade, TheStreet.com, and more. So another thing about Danielle is that she wrote an important book in 2017 called Fed Up, an insider's take on why the Federal Reserve is bad for America. And she, before starting QI Research, spent 9 years at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. And I'm going to ask her about that. And before that, she was at Credit Suisse and Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. She has a BBA from University of Texas, San Antonio, as well as an MBA in Finance and International Business from UT Austin, and, relevant to our audience, an MS in Journalism from Columbia University. So, Danielle, welcome to our show.
Well, I'm honored and happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start out by just having you tell our audience a little bit about, one thing I should say first. I believe that some of the people who have logged on are your clients. So a warm welcome to those of you who don't normally listen to these sessions, who are followers of Danielle. Thanks for joining us. So with that out of the way, could you just tell us a little bit about how you got your start, taking it from the very beginning, where you grew up and so on, and how you got to where you are today?
So, yes, when I knew what I wanted to be when I was an adult, when I grew up, all I wanted to be was a writer. I was in creative writing. I was the editor of my high school newspaper. When I was 16, in 1986, a very frightened me went to the Columbia Journalism Workshop for high school students. And I was told that I had a great future in sports writing at the time, which was kind of, I thought that would be a really fun future, actually. I'm a big sports fan. But life takes its twists and turns. As things turn out, I was one of the NYU scholars and given half of a scholarship to start at NYU, my undergraduate degree. And life sometimes is not fair or funny. And my parents ended up getting a divorce, and I was not able, even with that generous scholarship, to become one of the 15 scholars chosen out of the NYU freshman class that year. I would have gone to Russia as a foreign correspondent that first summer. It's still on my bucket list of things to do. Anyways, I ended up working full-time and going to San Antonio College. I'm a product of the community college system. I did my first 2 years there, as many students do in the state of Texas. They start out in the community college system and finish their 2 years in the University of Texas system. And in my case, I went on to great things on Wall Street, ended up getting my MBA in finance and working for a storied investment bank. The first started after World War II, Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. We were bought out at the peak of the dot-com boom, which happened to be the subject of my thesis. I found great success on Wall Street, maybe too much, such that I decided that I needed to put myself in the corner and go back to school at night. So I was probably the oldest night student at Columbia Journalism School. It was probably the highlight of my time in New York. I received special dispensation to take my law class with the two gentlemen who'd handled the Pentagon Papers. during trading hours. So my managing director let me zip up to the West Side for that one class. I was part of the just established Reuters Forum. I studied at the Cornell burn unit weeks before 9/11. I was in journalism school on 9/11, and I graduated in December of 2001. And I have to say, those were probably the most formative years of my adult life, and that the journalism school probably left a bigger impact on me because I was in school on 9/11 than anything else in my career on Wall Street, as much as I learned being a very successful individual inside the Wall Street system.
So a lot of fascinating tidbits there and some loose ends to be tied up. One of them is, what did you mean when you said that you're almost too successful and you need to put yourself in the corner? I don't understand that.
Well, I was living a good life. I was on Fifth Avenue. I was probably the youngest member of what they called the Chairman's Club. I was the top of my class of 1996, and I think I was just having too much fun. There wasn't enough seriousness in my life, and I kind of felt this yearning, empty need of the 16-year-old girl who dreamed of going to journalism school. And I said to myself, well, maybe that would fulfill you. And as things turn out, one of the people who wrote my letters of recommendation to Columbia is a gentleman by the name of Red McCombs. He passed away last year, but I had gotten to know him in San Antonio. I had started writing a weekly on the financial markets when I was at DLJ, and he became a big fan. A magnet in San Antonio gave $50 million to the business school where I graduated from. It's now called the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas. And he, along with some other individuals and a good track record on Wall Street and a nice resume, got into Columbia. So there I went. I took myself off the streets of New York. And as soon as the stock market closed every day, I raced over to the West Side and jumped on the 1, 2, or 3 and got up to Columbia to get to night school. And it was great fun. It was great. And I worked full time. I had 2 assistants, and I don't think I've ever worked that hard in my entire life between my schoolwork and my work. But it taught me a lot, and it taught me a lot at a very formative time. I ended up writing my master's thesis on the financial media's impact on the .com boom and on their live. I was back to thinking about and writing about sports, because that was how every IPO, initial public offering, was treated on CNBC, as if there was, as if we were waiting for the next Super Bowl to be played.
So your thesis made the argument that there was a lot of boosterism in the financial press and media.
It did. It made the argument that it kind of it really built the animal spirits of the smaller retail trader. Gee, I've just got to get in on this one more deal. And animal spirits is something that in my next life at the Federal Reserve, I learned a lot about, but I couldn't put a name on it when I was writing my master's thesis. It wasn't until I learned about animal spirits through the prism of economics that I had a full enough appreciation for what I had witnessed being on Wall Street during this magnificent era, when anything that ended with a .com could get crazy valuations. And thank heavens we've never gone back there with SPACs and NFTs and cryptocurrencies. Oh, wait, here we are.
Maybe we have. Yeah. Looking at today's valuations, seems like we're right back in it, right? You mentioned something offhandedly about the Cornell burn unit. I didn't understand that at all. What was that all about?
So every student at the Columbia Journalism School had to become embedded as a war correspondent might. And we had different things we could choose from. I was up in the Bronx for a period studying asthma among the younger people, and how living in close proximity to the bus yards had made their health a little bit more precarious. That was one of my bigger assignments. My biggest major project was to become embedded with the nurses in the Columbia burn unit. It was a very quiet time on the ward, It was not full, but I learned so much about the different ways that people can land in the burn unit aside from being burned. If you fall asleep for too long on a certain portion of your body, it actually ends up having the same effect as being burned. And if you're a burn unit nurse, you blow off steam by working in the NICU for a few weeks so you don't become overwhelmed. So it's the hardest nursing that can be done. And and so when they did have a very full unit after 9/11, I really had my heart really hurt for the nurses at knowing what they were going through and knowing that they wished that they had more patients yet, rather than those who perished in the buildings those days, many of whom worked in the fixed income world with me.
Yeah. And you went from there to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas? Was that, or was there?
Oh heavens, no. When I decided to leave Wall Street to move to Dallas, one of my assignments at the beginning of the MBA training program was to not come back to work the next morning at 6:30 a.m. unless I'd read Liar's Poker from cover to cover, which I did. And of course, that one line, equities in Dallas, stuck with me. Of course, Dallas has got the zip code that I'm sitting in right now has got the second highest concentration of financial market players in the country after 06830, third largest, I should say, after New York City and 06830, Greenwich, Connecticut. Little did I know how many equities there were in Dallas, but just the same, I said I was ready to retire, sign a non-compete. I got a great bundle of money from the bank. I phoned the publisher of the Dallas Morning News and I said, I'm willing to work for free. I'm in retirement. I'm not allowed to be on Wall Street for some time here. He said, working for free works very well with my budget, as since you mentioned it. So I then went from being one of the oldest night students at Columbia Journalism School to by far being the oldest unpaid intern at the Dallas Morning News. I wrote crazy things like the perils, potentially of having the Chinese buy such large portions of U.S. Treasury at U.S. Treasury auctions and where that could lead us in the future. I wrote that 20 years ago, and here we are today, worried about that very subject. I wrote about private pensions and sloughing them off on U.S. taxpayers, and then of course we had the airlines, and they did the same exact thing. In any event, I was invited out to Omaha. I was one of 5 domestic reporters at the who got to meet Warren Buffett at the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. He had 15 international reporters there. I was astounded that he mostly invited international journalists, but that's where I got to spend a good long bit of time with Charlie Munger, which is, I mean, if you didn't bless him, he just passed away. But boy, I checked a bucket list box that I never knew existed, spending time with Charlie Munger. And shortly thereafter, Richard Fisher, the newly appointed president of the Dallas Federal Reserve, called me, and I was asked to serve my country, which I proudly did, but I had no idea I was going to do it for 9 years. I'm not exactly a bureaucrat.
Tell us what you did with Fisher.
So initially there was a lot of speech writing to be done. So I would pick up the Financial Times and read the salmon colored newspaper and see my written word and what he'd said, quote it. That was always a thrill. But the main responsibility that I had was writing briefings about everything financial markets, whether it was private equity or commercial real estate or residential real estate or the public equity markets, fixed income, corporate balance sheets, you name it. I would write a markets briefing for President Fisher prior to him traveling to Washington, D.C. to take part in Federal Open Market Committee meetings. In preparation to do so, I would travel to New York and spend 3 or 4 days on trading floors, speaking with strategists, speaking with traders, speaking with economists, all people across the street in order to prepare these briefings. And it was a very unorthodox rule. He did not take his markets intelligence from the New York markets desk, which is actually, I didn't know, but it's a written, sort of unwritten and written law. But Richard Fisher started off at Brown Brothers Harriman. He was an MBA in finance, as I was. He was not a PhD in economics, and he wanted for his own unbiased markets intelligence. So I ran the Dallas markets desk for years. It was a thrill. I reunited with my Bloomberg terminal after having not had one at the Dallas Morning News and missing it from my days at DLJ, and married my knowledge of economics, my knowledge of the financial markets, and my experience with my passion for writing, and ended up doing something that was of great service to President Fisher. And in my private world, I haven't stopped. I do exactly what I did for him, but I do it for private consumption for my clients.
Nice, nice. And so that shortly after you finished with the Dallas Fed is when you started QI research, I take it.
I published my first flagship weekly 5 days after I left the Fed. And I think I've skipped about 4 or 5 weeks since then, but I've written nonstop ever since then, that flagship weekly. Several years ago, I took the daily on as well, and then my Saturday Outlook piece as well. So what I've given up in the interim is sleep.
Sleep. I was about to say, why do you work so hard when you really don't need to? Serious question.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, why did I write Fed Up? And by the way, don't ever rely on Random House or anybody else to choose the subtitle. The first choice is, why the Federal Reserve is bad for America. The first subtitles read like something from the National Enquirer. That was the cooled off version. I find there to be a lot of editorializing in the financial press, whether it's the written word, whether it's what we see on TV. That's the fact, Jack. So I watched Stripes one too many times. I believe in being data agnostic, and I believe in also making finance and markets intelligence and economics entertaining enough that if you learn to live by the creed of the New York Times and you write that first captivating paragraph, then they're going to read the whole thing. So I start off every single daily and every single weekly with something that is edifying and entertaining that then segues into the news of the day. And it is truly fulfilling to me to know that, like DLJ, I run an independent research firm that is in no way influenced by any outside factors or any need to sell anything. I just speak the data, tell the truth, and write to it in an entertaining and intelligent fashion.
That's great. So I told you I was not going to focus on content so much as your career, but I do want to ask you about Fed Up a little bit, since that's one of the things you're best known for, even for people who don't read your newsletters. Tell us about how you came upon writing that book, especially having been a Fed insider.
So there was, we all have moments in our life where we reach kind of a break point. And when I was inside the Fed, my break point was reached after years of being part of an internal debate. There was an existential soul searching going on within the confines of the Federal Reserve. We must drill down, come to the bottom of why it is that we so missed the inflation in residential real estate, the inflation in asset prices. Clearly, we need a new mousetrap. We absolutely have to have a new gauge of inflation that captures sources that are not in the conventional consumer price index or the core personal consumer expenditure that follows that by a matter of weeks. And after all of this soul searching, it was determined that the Fed wouldn't be able to continue conducting large-scale asset purchases. We were never able to call QE. We were never able to say quantitative easing inside the confines of the Fed. We had to refer to them as large-scale asset purchases. But because large-scale asset purchases would fail to be justified if we used a more holistic inflation metric that did capture asset prices, after all of those years of white papers and defending thesis, it was simply tossed aside for the sake of, we need to keep money cheap, so we're going to keep it cheap. that was my break point. I felt like the world needed to know that the Fed did know that it was making policy using the wrong playbook.
What kind of reception did you get to the book?
Well, the editors of the Wall Street Journal, who had exclusive rights to the long manuscript, the night before, they had interviewed me twice, and they had interviewed Richard Fisher, and they decided that they were not going to do a book review. That's the only reason that Penguin Random House gave them exclusivity, as opposed to the other major publications that wanted the book. And they were going to write an article, again, not a review. And the night before, February the 13th, 2017, the lawyers for the Wall Street Journal pulled the article and said that it would not be possible for the Wall Street Journal's name to be on an article about a book that was so critical of Janet Yellen. Even though, the lawyers had long since taken me through the ringer, I think that the index and the footnotes are longer than the book itself, in the sense that everything that was written was not of my opinion or my viewpoint or my perspective. I told it through my prism, through my experience, but it was all in their words. It was all quotes, direct quotes from congressional testimony and speeches made over the years. And yet the Wall Street Journal pulled that book. I'm fortunate to this day to have taken into hire a press person from the Clinton press pool years ago, who's now a book publicist. And she's my publicist to this day. And she scrambled in and did major damage control. The book went to, I think, number 8 worldwide on Amazon for a hot minute. I remember that minute.
Yeah.
Once I surpassed the number of reviews that Ben Bernanke had for his first book that was out at the same time. Once I surpassed his number of reviews, I really quit paying attention to the book itself and was just pleased that it became part of required curriculum for my kids' AP economics class in high school. Many colleges require it today because it is a very quick 236-page read that basically plows its way through tomes and tomes of economic textbooks, because I put all of the jargon translated into plain English and give a very thorough and interesting review of what led to the great financial crisis and how that was addressed by the world's most powerful central bank. So my favorite Amazon review was it's Ludlum meets Lewis. And that's exactly how I wanted it to read.
Nice. Ludlum meets Lewis. I just noticed, I was looking through our participants. I see Kathleen Hayes is in the room.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Kathleen. Hi.
Kathleen, do you want to come on and say hi or ask a question or something?
Gosh, I go back with Kathleen a long ways.
Yeah. Well, see if she's around.
Oh, okay. Hi. Sorry. I'm doing hi. Hi, this is great. Oh my God.
Hi, Kathleen. I've never even told you my story like this.
I know, it's great. I just yeah. And I think it's
so small story, Kathleen. I'll make it quick. I recently spent a long weekend as part of a GIC delegation to the Bahamas with Christopher Waller and his lovely wife. And I said, boy, Mr. Waller, you were Chief Lieutenant #1. That night, Kathleen had you on right after you were confirmed. I said, oh, she's interviewing Christopher Waller. I turned it off mute, and there you were. And you said the housing market was white hot. And we agree that you're the best journalist on the planet when it comes to the monetary policy period end.
Well, we all this and everybody's listening in their beat and what they do. I think a lot of us go back a long way. And I have discovered that's how I look at it, many fine people. And I used to go out to the St. Louis Fed every year and for their Homer Jones Memorial Lecture and do a big long interview with Jim. And I started interviewing Chris back then. Anyway, but thank you, dear.
Wow.
Yeah, but your story, I think for all of us, it's interesting, it's inspiring. And I think, the hard work and when you get dedicated to a beat that you just can't let go of, right? And I think many people here, that's what we do. And over time, you get the hard work.
Yeah.
and the rewards that go with it. So thank you. It's wonderful. And then, you know, honestly, dear, I never knew your whole story. I can remember when you were first starting this out, where were we, in Midtown, meeting with one of your market guys that you'd work with. Do you remember that?
Oh
And
gosh.
yeah, so again, I think you're a great model for everybody of just dive in, just grab it, you know, and go with it. And I think everybody's enjoying this. And also this whole thing of how do you use these? How do you use Substack? How can you make that work to your
Oh, gosh.
advantage?
Yes.
I think that's something that you can bring so much to us all. And again, it's so fun to see you. I'm
Hi, Kathleen. Thank you.
multitasking. I did an interview with somebody that I'm going to post later, and I gotta kind of do some little things to it. But
Well, do what you need to do,
I'm
Kathleen.
listening though. I can do
It's
both.
great to see you. It's
Okay,
great to
good
see you.
to see you too.
I,
Okay,
I,
so
I
I'm
will tell you,
listening.
I'm just going to assume that you've asked a Substack question, so I'll answer the Substack question.
Please do.
It was a huge, huge, huge leap of faith. There's nothing that's more frightening to a small business person than their back office. Nothing. Nothing scares them more than accounting and billing. I have an institutional client base. You know, they pay me however they want to pay me, but it was becoming very unwieldy to keep track of the readers of the daily, and it's become a cult. You know, I start my day with the Daily Feather, but so I was told by Doomberg, the green chicken. A lot of people know and associate him with Substack, but he kind of introduced me to the team at Substack, and they worked with my back office. And it took us a few months, but we managed to make the transition. We just passed our first anniversary with Substack, and I couldn't be any more pleased that I'm part of what I think is should be described as a community. It's a Substack community. And I keep finding old colleagues that are on the platform, and they're like, you know, I'm telling everybody to read the Feather. I discovered the Feather, Danielle. I'm not going to call up a colleague and say, you really should read me. I'm not that kind of a salesperson. But I'm always astounded now to see, when I see who's on Substack and who's subscribing, the number of people whose names I recognize now. So I'm pleased with the transition, and I'm pleased with Substack.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, so I'm so glad Kathleen interjected that. What advice would you give to journalists, financial journalists, about just how to do their jobs?
So that's a difficult question for me to answer, because I tell everybody that they should start their career in any capacity that they can figure out in sales. Sales is the hardest thing any of us are ever asked to do. If you will, very few human beings are born to be confrontational. And yet sales are by definition confrontational. You have, especially because you're confronting yourself and you're asking for things that you wouldn't otherwise know to ask for. I landed on the front page of the Dallas Morning News in the first week that I was there. And I mean, it almost scared me. But I think part of the reason was because I'd become accustomed to picking up the phone and calling the CEO. I mean, I never said, well, let me start with an underling and slowly work my way up to the top of the ladder. I certainly didn't have that courage when I started right on Wall Street. But by golly, if you're going to survive on Wall Street, you either sink or you swim. And I learned how to swim. And that was why when I went barreling into financial journalism, you know, there were two people at the time who were doing work on mortgage equity withdrawal. Alan Greenspan, well, he wasn't available, and Jan Hatzius, a new economist at Goldman Sachs. And that was how I got to know Jan years and years and years ago. I just picked up the phone and called him. And that's the best, that was how I got such a quick foothold as a true journalist. It was why I was the first 5-day-a-week columnist in the history of the Dallas Morning News, which is not a young newspaper. I've everything since sales has been easier to me than sales. There are some times that I wake up in the middle of the night in a hot sweat because I'm put back on my first few months on Wall Street and sinking or swimming. But I recommend to every financial journalist that you go straight to the source or get as close as you can.
What is your key to productivity? How do you manage to put out so much material and good material?
I never, to my detriment, since I started the daily, I've not read a book. That's not true. I've read one book cover to cover.
Ludlum, right?
No, actually, no, it wasn't Ludlum. No, it wasn't Ludlum. I can't even think of the name of the book, but it was really good. Which is why I couldn't put it down. I never stop taking information in. I have a little cottage in Indiana. When I say little, is little. There's 7 TVs in it. Is that because I'm addicted to streaming? No. I have on Bloomberg on mute everywhere I go, because unlike other news channels, there's a constant stream of stories that are going by. I have Bloomberg on my phone. I have Bloomberg alerts on my phone. And I read the Financial Times and Barron's, which nobody reads anymore, but everybody should, and the Wall Street Journal. And I keep up with as much as I possibly can. As long as I stay in the thick of the news stream, there's always something that I have to share with my clients, always. Well, Danielle, the economic docket is practically empty this week. No, it's not. Have you seen what's happening in Germany? It's never empty.
Right.
But you have to put yourself, you just drink from the fire hose, take in as much information as you can, and you'll be as prolific as you want.
But it's because you want to share. It's not because you have a deadline and so you have to write something. You're looking forward to being able to communicate.
Yeah, it is my passion.
Yeah.
If you're going to write about something you care about. You'll never write better than when you write about what you care about the absolute most. When the pandemic first hit, I took it upon myself to try as hard as I could to have all of my Twitter followers do everything they could to support their small businesses. I felt so strongly about keeping our communities together that I used my platform to write about support your small businesses. When I found out about the employee retention credit, I was so livid, out of my mind, angry, that I said, you know what? Funnel this anger, get the data. The data went straight to the House Ways and Means Committee through clients, unbeknownst to me. It went to the commissioner of the IRS through clients, unbeknownst to me. But I wrote about it. And on September the 17th last year, 3 days before my birthday, it was the best birthday present ever. They pulled the plug on it and all the fraud that went with it. So my passion manifests in real world outcomes. And as long as you have a passion about what you're writing about, yours will too.
That's fantastic. That's really good advice. And I think we can all take that to heart. We have a few messages in the chat. John Jacobs wrote, this is back on the topic of writing about how you gave the advice of starting in sales. He said, when I worked at the Journal of Commerce, the newsroom people all felt deeply superior to the salespeople, that sales was beneath them. He said that always troubles him. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy, because they're doing the yeoman's work. There wouldn't be anything to write for if it wasn't for those salesmen.
That's true. Very true.
Oh gosh.
And another participant asks, what was that front page story in the Dallas Morning News your first week on the job?
It was about the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And there's a lot more written about it today than there was then, about how perilous its financial standing was, given it looked like a lot more private companies would possibly be sloughing off their public pensions onto the PBGC, and what that meant for U.S. taxpayers in the future. And yes, sure enough, the PBGC continues to be buried in pensions.
Margaret Price asks if you could discuss how you use Substack. Now, I know you have the Daily Feather, in the weekly quill. So we know what you're putting on Substack, but could you maybe, I guess, give a little more of the mechanics of how that all happens?
Well, it was, I think I'd probably choose a root canal than have to move the stripe over and hold the clients. But once you do it, it's seamless. So, if I recommend another publication, or if another publication recommends me, because Substack in its very infrastructure already has any given potential subscriber's credit card on hand, and it really is as mechanistic as that. That means that if they like what you write, they're like, I want to start reading this person, and they go click, and it's seamless.
Yes.
And whether they're taking you for a test drive for a month or a year, it really is that easy. And I've also found that even though it's something that I'll probably end up hiring a high school intern to do this summer, the one regret I have on Substack is that there's not enough of me to really make the comment section more robust. So that is something that I want to do going forward, because I feel like there's probably a lot more commentary that could be struck between readers of my daily if I could clone me. But I already mentioned the giving up sleep part. So I don't have any more of me to give, but I am going to have somebody take that on in an internship position.
The idea being somebody to go through all the reader mail and decide what to put in or to respond to it, or what?
More so, and the reason it would have to be a really smart intern, it's somebody who could be me.
That's gonna be a challenge.
Well,
There's only one of you.
or at least come to me and ask how to kind of unravel, or begin, I should say, a thread where there's more. And that's the one thing that I really want to do with Substack, is grow my own community within Substack, because I've gotten so much from others who are on the platform who've recommended me.
That is great. I agree with you that Substack is pretty seamless. I know there are a lot of new competitors now. Some people are switching, but if it works for you, hey, why not?
Well, I don't think I'll be switching to anything anytime soon. I also have a live Bloomberg chat room that goes on every day. I was even with one of my clients in Singapore last night, chatting about Japanese GDP coming in below expectations. So that's I'm pulled in many directions, but as far as changing platforms anytime soon, no, I'm happy with Substack right now.
Greg Miles is asking about generative AI. Has that been something that you've dabbled in? And tell us how, if so.
So I have not. Sometimes if I put something cryptic, specifically in my Bloomberg chat room, I'll have a client come in and frighteningly drop it into Chat GPT, and it will spit out something sort of with my sarcasm and tone, but translate what I've just said. I've been told that my writing style is so unique that I cannot replace myself with Chat GPT, and as of now, it's still all me.
That's good. No, it's true that you don't go straight to the data in your first paragraph. There's usually some kind of anecdote, story, as you said, a kind of a hook.
No, I mean, tonight we wrote about, the 5 gigantic stones that are part of this competition that started out in 1986. And the reason that earlier competitors couldn't actually pick up the 5 huge balls between, 200 and 250 pounds, something incredible like that. But there was a sticky substance that you can buy on Amazon. Of course you can buy it on Amazon. And, but there was a sticky substance that helped competitors in the latter day that was so strong that it helped them pick up these massive stones and put them on the pillars. And that got us into the discussion of sticky inflation.
Aha, of course. Natural segue.
Yep.
We're going to probably wrap pretty soon, but I just want to make sure, see if there's other people who have, oh, here's a question. So how do you develop a subscriber base on Substack? How did you grow your audience?
So we try our best, and because the tickler paragraph, if you will, doesn't give away any of the analysis. That is something that we use to whet the mental appetite of our free subscribers. So we have tens of thousands of free subscribers on Substack, and I would say a good portion of our paying subscribers have transitioned from being free subscribers mainly because they want to know what this whack job is writing about. How does she come up with these crazy tops every day that have absolutely nothing to do with one another? It's not as if it's a romantic novel and a series and it's the same theme. They're all completely disconnected from one another, but we do put that out there as a teaser of sorts. And that helps to build our free subscriber base and that community. And then you end up with one convert after another.
Brilliant. Folks, please enter your questions now, if any, before we let Danielle get back to her incredibly productive life.
I have already feathered the feather, so
you're done for tonight.
I don't have that weight on me, so I was able to get that into editing early on.
Here's one question: what mistakes have you, from Victoria Zhuang? What mistakes have you made in Substack, if any?
Well, the mistakes I've made, I go back to what I was saying before, is that I'm not able to really build on the commentary enough in Substack. I haven't, I mean, I'm pleased to say, look, the transition to Substack, it was supposed to be a matter of weeks. It was a matter of months. And it was hard learning. And, we've all got CPAs and there's going to be stumbling blocks, and there are going to be subscribers who are 90 years old and absolutely cannot figure out how to make their way through transitioning from something that is easily consumable to a little bit less easy to consume on Substack. But as far as mistakes, really, it's not being able to use the platform enough. Yeah. And that is definitely something that I've identified that I want to address. And it is becoming the time to hire high school interns. So I'm going to figure this out.
Somebody could be very lucky to have a chance to work with you. I'm sure they'll learn a lot.
I actually still have one of my college interns who works with me in a very far capacity, but he said, I can't completely disassociate myself from this company, which by the way, used to be named Quill. The written word marries intelligence, markets intelligence. But there was a copyright attorney whose name was close enough to mine that I had to end up giving that up and calling it QI, which is now why it's abbreviated QI research. But it was always the intersection of markets and economics intelligence with the Quill. Plus, I think Q is it's just an underrepresented letter.
Good. I think I might make this the last question. It's from Pukulali Thangavelu. What sort of frequency of publication word length do you find works best?
So I am my own most stringent governor. We never publish more than 900 words. It never takes more than 5 minutes to read our daily. If it did, it wouldn't be read. My weeklies, they're an immense journey. Readers of my weekly, they describe it as a non-jolting roller coaster ride where they have to get through the first few pages, first few paragraphs of the journey before they start the craziness of the roller coaster ride. And then I bring them gently back into the station in the end. And those are 3,000 to 5,000 word journeys that occupy I hashtag Writing Wednesday. They occupy my Writing Wednesdays. And as one of my institutional clients recently said to me, I have to find a different outlet because my only way to have kind of mental peace is to write it out. He said, you can't talk about things. You have to write them out of you. And if you don't write them out of you, it's as if you're pregnant, but for much longer than you need to be pregnant. Yeah. So he said, you've got to find another outlet. And I said, well, for now, I'm blessed because the dreams that I had as a child of growing up and being a writer have married the dreams that were born on Wall Street and the passion that I have for the markets and economics. And I couldn't be any more pleased with my station in life because I was able to pursue not one, but two dreams.
Beautiful. That's a great note to end on. Danielle, thank you very much for joining the New York Financial Writers Association. It was a great session, and wish you all the best.